Holy Spirit, we want more of you.
Today's topic is quite a difficult one, but it's something that we do encounter, and in our equipping that we are doing, I think it's something that we should have a little bit of knowledge around. So I am following on a little bit. Last time we were looking at eating disorders, and this time we're going to be looking a little bit at self-harm. What do you do when you're working with somebody and they have disclosed to you they self-harm, and how do you help them? Um, Obviously, part of what we have to do is to pray for them, but there's a number of other thoughts that we can go and do, and things that we can think about when we're working with people with that are self-harming. And it was just interesting. I've been speaking to one of my supervisees this morning, and he works with young people, and he has a number of young people. When I talk young people, they're young adolescents that are self-harming. So this begins at quite a young age in a lot of cases. Um, Depending on how we are working and who we are, when you're working with families, this might come across to you more as the parents talking about their adolescent that is self-harming. But then the ideas can also be carried forward. So another interesting fact that he was citing, that the self-harming and eating disorder tends to be in the socio-economic upper class, middle class bracket. Um, so in that bracket, there is a tendency for the young people to take the anger out on themselves. Hence, you have eating disorders and self-harming towards themselves. Where in the uh, poorer socioeconomic group, the anger is often directed else outside. So they tend to attack people on the outside. And it was just an interesting thing that he brought into the discussion. So yeah, we go. Right, screen share. Right, there we are. Living Waters Ministries, revive, loving bigger, better, and wider. And we are a love in action, and we going and making disciples, going into the world as we go and do our thing. We make disciples and help people to become who the Father created them to be. And so we are understanding self-harming and what that entails and where it works from. And there's two little scriptures that I picked out. It was quite interesting. Found in the scriptures I was looking at, was there self-harming in the scriptures? And this is the story of Jesus with the man at Gagarenes. And this was the man that was demon possessed. He had a legion, and day and night in the tombs and in the mountains, he kept crying out and cutting himself with stones. And it really gives you a very strong understanding. There is a strong demonic element in this self-harming, which is something that we need to be aware of when we are ministering to people. Um, and obviously, we can't just go directly to that, but it is something that we will, in our prayer with the people, have to bring into what we do as we minister to them. And this is the other story. This is old Elijah on the Mount of Carmel, and all the guys there that they were doing their sacrifice to Baal. And Elijah was just giving them a little bit of a rib there and said, maybe God's asleep. Maybe your God needs to be woken up. Shout louder. And so they shouted louder and cut themselves with knives and lances, as was their custom until the blood gushed over them. And again, there's a very strong demonic element when we are looking at this type of behavior. Um, but be careful that we just don't label everything uh, like that, because there are a lot of other factors that we need to address within the person's lives and their life that needs to be addressed to help them become who God created them to be. So here's the little exercise I've given us today. So Remy, I presume you are busy working out the breakout rooms. In your breakout room, discuss. So previously we discussed eating disorders. What do you think are the differences between eating disorders and self-harm? Now, I'm not talking about the outside aspects of one is about food and the other is about injuring themselves. I'm thinking about what could be the causes. Why are these two aspects of human behavior similar, and where are they different? What is the difference between them? So how would you approach them differently? So we got a couple of minutes to discuss that. Rami, whenever you're ready, can you put us into our breakout rooms? Okay, right. That's quite interesting a little bit. Well, I don't think I need to do the presentation anymore. Okay. Gee, joking. Let's just go through it and then we'll just build up a little bit more of the ideas. But guys, you are absolutely awesome. So here we go. Screen share. There we are. And we've done that. And I just want to close this off. That's out the way. Let's go. Right. Where? No, oh no, what? Ah, there we go. Right. Sorry about that. Right. So I'm just going to look at a lot of the background behind self-harm, the types of self-harm, and all the rest. So let's go quite quickly. So self-harm includes anything to intentionally injure oneself. So the word is intentional injury, and it can go from cutting to severely scratching the skin. It can sometimes people burn and scald themselves. It's something that we can also think about, because often that can hide that they're self-harming. Oh, it was an accident. So just be aware of that. Um, Head banging. I've had quite a few, when I say quite a few, I've had a couple of cases where people as children have banged their heads quite a lot. Punching things, throwing the body against walls and hard objects, things like that, sticking objects into their skin. This is an interesting one for me, and I don't have a full answer to it, but I'm often wondering if piercing, all these piercings that some people do, isn't that a form of self-harm? It's a thought that I'd like to hear people's ideas upon. And then intentionally preventing wounds from healing, and lastly, in swallowing poisonous subjects or inappropriate objects. I had a client that was shoving batteries into his mouth, opened his mouth and putting batteries into his mouth. So yeah, there's quite a lot of stuff that they do that we need to be aware of. And the question is, why do they do it? And this is very much uh, self-harm gives short-term release of endorphin. So the moment you cut yourself, your hypothalamus secretes, sends a message, okay, there's an injury to my body, endorphins, and endorphins give you a relief from the emotional pain and turmoil. But the underlying cause is still present. So it's very short-lived, but it's quite interesting that they hurt themselves and then suddenly as the one person described it to me, I just totally at peace for that moment. And it's just going for that. In this turmoil of my life, I just have this peace. And that's why they do it. It's looking for peace, and as Mark said, it's this peace that we need to give them, um, and that's part of what the kingdom is about. Um, Reasons why people self-harm: express something that is hard to put into words. Often they don't have the language. Turning invisible thoughts and feelings into something visible. So often children and teens, I don't feel heard. That's something we got to keep remembering. So it's to change emotional pain into physical pain, to reduce overwhelming emotional feelings and thoughts. So the emotional aspect of it is very, very strong in both these cases that we were talking about. And it gives a sense of being in control. I can do something, yeah, where nothing else is helping in. If I cut myself, at least I get that momentary relief. And to escape traumatic memory as well, just these flashbacks that have happened in the past. And then just continually reasons why people self-harm. They have something in life they can rely on. So, parents are not in a very, very good place. They cannot rely on the parents. They need some form of comfort. How do I comfort myself? Um, Binge eating is also a form of comfort, but then it has the subsequent following. Oh, I've eaten too much. I now need to get rid of it because I'm going to be too fat. They punish themselves for their feelings and experiences. A lot of it is self-punishment. I'm bad. I'm guilty. I did something wrong. So they're punishing themselves, can be in there. And Kim brought this up, to stop feeling numb and disconnected. When you have trauma, you leave your body and you're somewhere out there, and I don't feel. And it's a way of bringing you back into the present to try and feel, because we have to feel. Uh, Create a reason to physically care for ourselves. So um, within our human psyche, we can have one part of us saying we're bad, and the other part says, I need some comfort. And these can play off inside the human thinking. And they can express suicidal thoughts without taking their own life. So that is something that can often happen. They don't want to kill themselves, but they feel suicidal. So they can do halfway there kind of thing. Uh, why self-harm is often the only way they know how to create the uh, safety that they need. It's the only way they know how to cope with things like sadness, self-loathing, emptiness, rage. Especially in our a more affluent society, we can't go around so easily attacking police, mommy and daddy, my society, my friends around me. That's not a very good outward image, so they turn it inwards a little bit. Express feelings they can't put into words. A lot of these ideas come up again and again in this presentation. Release the pain and the tension they feel inside. They feel in control, they punish themselves, they resolve inner conflict in all of this. They can distract themselves. This is a very interesting one. The conflict is so high, they got to get away from it. So you have mom and dad continually fighting in the home, or there's just this pressure to perform, and just, I can't manage this, and to distract themselves to find an escape. They can do self-harming. And then obviously to make themselves feel alive. And again, it comes with this numbness. To feel something instead of nothing. Better to have some pain than no pain at all. Now, here's a difficulty that we have with self-harming. And you can see I've got this little slide of this girl that's in the bubble. You got everybody trying to get through to her, but she gets herself in a bubble. And we talk about in our professional world about this, not me, not mine. And you find that when adolescents come into counseling, And the counselors say, okay, what you struggling with? Nothing. Why are you here? Because my parents wanted me to come here. And the left brain can work into total denial of the outside circumstances. Meanwhile, they're cutting themselves, they're sleeping badly, they're not going to school, they're doing 101 things. And they have this, no, it's not me, it's not mine, kind of getting um, avoiding really what is there. So we cannot work with these people so much on the left-hand brain. You've got to work more in the right-hand brain with words and pictures, picture words rather. Left-hand brain is words, word pictures. Um, that gives them a sense of emotional connectivity. And then we can work with them. So if you're going to try and work with them on a left brain, a logical, don't do that, it's not going to be very successful. And they often say, I'm okay. There's nothing wrong with me. Um, and they often go through denial. They're scratching themselves. They're sticking their nails into their palms. They grinding their teeth. Well, no, it's not self-harm, but it is in a way. Um, Also, be aware of how they cut. Um, and I don't know if you can see me on the camera, but often if they cut down the longitudinal way of their arm, if they're harming themselves there, they're not wanting to commit suicide. When people want to commit suicide, they cut across the wrist, across the veins. So you can pick out whether they're really suicidal, and we did a little talk on suicide ideation a little earlier this year, or it is just they got this incredible internal turmoil and tension that they're trying to manage. Then they're often cut where it cannot be seen. The inside of the legs and on the stomach is a place that they sometimes will cut themselves. And it's generally not disclosed. In other words, somebody finds razor blades and cotton wool or tissues with blood on. Um, we have a case where this child, she's 12, scratched herself. It wasn't a deep wound at all, but disclosed. And we were looking at why she did that and what was the purpose of the disclosure. So it's these little things. And the negative results from self-harming is feelings of guilt and shame, results in avoidance, isolation, and loneliness. And I think it was you, VJ, that came up with this thing of being isolated. No, or was it Mark? Mark, I think you were talking about this isolation. Or was it Caroline? And yeah, all of you. Well done. Um, First steps, and this is the interesting part. What do you do? If somebody's come to you and they've just cut themselves, what is the first thing you do? You control the bleeding to prevent infection. So the first thing you say, okay, let's see the wound. Okay, let's go take it to the bathroom. Let's wash it out. Let's put some Savlon on. Let's put a plaster on. Don't immediately work with, oh, why did you do that? Go to the very practical first aid um, action, because what they really are wanting is love. And by just looking after them, you are starting to minister to them in a way that they need it at that moment. And, just watch out that a loss of blood can result in shock that comes up. And then obviously stay with them until the urge has passed, because these urges come and then they go. And so we just need to stay with them. I'll be with you. We'll get through this together. I've shared that a lot of times. So just first steps is always just do some good practical first aid. The next step is a little bit deeper now. They're nice and more calmer, and they wanting to talk. Focus on their feelings. What were you feeling? What you feeling now? What were you feeling before you did that? Allow them to talk without any correction. Oh, you mustn't say that is not very helpful, because now they go back into the condemnation that goes back into the cycle of self-harming. Listen to what they are saying and what they are not saying. So many people are often not saying something, and always be curious. Keep that curiosity. What are they not saying? What are they not saying? And you might encourage them a little bit in trying to draw out what they're not saying. They might not say it because they're feeling embarrassed, they're feeling ashamed, and they're doing an avoidance. Identify the trigger. So what caused you to want to do this time? Becoming internally aware, it's now getting too much. Because if we can know when it's getting too much, we can now put things in place that we can manage the self-harming in a much more useful way. Help them find different coping techniques. The last slide, I will talk about that. And help them not to become isolated. You know, we always do all these things when we are on our own. We very seldom do it with others around, unless it's like a suicide pact where you meet somebody else with the same problem. Um, then you'll do it together. But most times we do these things, we are on our own. We don't have people around. So just being there makes a massive difference to people and the situation. So we're ministering a little bit more. Don't stigmatize through rejection. That's a bad thing to do, you know, that sort of thing. They need in love. What is their meaning of the self-harm behavior? Not what your meaning is. What is their meaning? What are you saying with this? It's another curiosity question, because as they begin to talk, they begin to make sense with what's going on with themselves, and then will be able to apply certain appropriate self-care that they don't do that again. Create safety in their external and internal worlds. And, you know, this is where prayer comes into the fore, trying to bring in the peace that surpasses all understanding. And what are they avoiding? It's quite interesting when you think about it, that somewhere in all of this, they are avoiding something. They could avoid addressing an issue, they're avoiding dealing with their pain, they're avoiding whatever. Always keep that. What are they avoiding? Explore their unmet needs, because underneath all of this is this deeper core: who am I and where do I fit in? And especially when we haven't had uh, supportive, encouraging comments in our childhood, that we are special, that we are unique, that we are wonderfully and beautifully made, Psalm 139, those sort of things. When they haven't received that, that's their unmet need. And we need to build up who they are, and specifically in Christians, who they are in Christ, without bringing condemnation. You shouldn't be doing this, because it's impossible for them to do it any differently at that moment. Look for the holes in the heart. And that's the key. Remember, the whole of Revive Living Waters Ministries is love bigger, bigger, better, wider. Love. Love never fails. Right. Here are some little tips for management of self-harming. There's a number of things, and these we can teach them to do. Obviously, when they are on their own, they need to try and do these things. And the first one, bite a lemon. Quite amazing, because the moment you bite a lemon, you're getting right into the present, and your whole mouth is focused around that sour taste, which really brings a strong wah into the present, which then helps them to manage the thought process are the destructive thoughts, which is either about the past or the future. So bite a lemon is a very, very good tip. And then, of course, you can also bite an ice block. That also gives a shock to the system to bring you into the present. And then we can manage thoughts. We take this thought captive. Okay, this is a thought. Let's put it over there. Let's look at it. So we kind of externalize, and I'll use that thought in a moment as well. This externalizing. Also breathing. Breathe in through the nose, a longer, slower breath out through the mouth, relaxing mouth. That changes the sympathetic nervous system to a more relaxed, being more relaxed, more control. So always use the breathing techniques. Remember, we had to take 5, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And the other one was the hand over the solar plexus and over the heart and swinging that around. Breathing is important. And then we externalize. So this is not you, this is a part of you. And as one of my clients calls her anorexia, she called it Rex. And so now we can talk at Rex. How annoying is Rex today? What does Rex want you to do today? How do we calm Rex? And that's part of the management thoughts. How do we pacify Rex? And we can often externalize this. And this often removes the guilt and the shame of who they are as their core person. So it helps us to create that image of who they are as a child of the Most High God. And chewing gum is also quite a useful thing, especially when there's good flavors, because you're doing something in the present. And that is it.